A very powerful film to this day. I first viewed this, I may have been 18 or 19 when I first viewed it, very bowled over by it. Viewing it again for the second time, extraordinarily impressed with this production. The cast is exemplary, the direction is superlative. You're so fortunate they were able to film in these houses. I'll read out some of the history of the production of this film. They were very lucky to be able to shoot in these locations. The cinematography from Tony Pierce Roberts is extraordinary. He's the typical photographer of these Merchant Ivory productions, from what I can understand. We're going to talk a bit about Merchant Ivory because I think most people are familiar with the major titles they put out. Obviously, this one, Room with a View, Howard's End in '92. Although they operated for quite a long time. It was the longest running independent film partnership in the world at one time. I believe I've read that quite recently. There's no reason a film that's totally focused on screenplay and performances can't also involve the medium as densely as the films of the European or East Asian art houses. The density of the photography here reminds one of the efforts of Fassbinder's best films, of those really strong Almodovar films from the late 80s, or Wong Kar-wai's films from the 1990s. Totally superlative work here. Now let's read out aloud about the production of The Remains of the Day. Well, for those who aren't aware, it's based off of a critically acclaimed novel, won the Booker Prize 1988, Kazuo Ishiguro's The Remains of the Day. A film adaptation of the novel was originally planned to be directed by Mike Nichols. Fortunately, it wasn't, from a script by Harold Pinter. We love Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and you know what? We'll also go so far as to say that we love The Day of the Dolphin. I don't care. Everything else is kind of rubbish. Maybe not being a baby boomer or some sort of out-of-place, out-of-time Gen Xer. The Graduate escapes me. Directed by Mike Nichols, from a script by Harold Pinter. That's good news. Some of Pinter's script was used in the film, but while Pinter was paid for his work, he asked to have his name removed from the credits, in keeping with his contract. Christopher C. Hudgens observes, during our 1994 interview, Pinter told Stephen H. Gale and me that he had learned his lesson after the revisions imposed on his script for The Handmaid's Tale, that's the Volker Schlondorf film, which he has decided not to publish. When his script for The Remains of the Day was radically revised by the James Ivory Ismail Merchant Partnership, he refused to allow his name to be listed in the credits. Though no longer the director, Nichols remained associated with the project as one of its producers. I don't want to diss Mike Nichols too much, although it's fair to say that, likely as not, Tony Pierce Roberts would not have shot this film if Nichols had directed it. Likely as not, Merchant and Ivory wouldn't have been involved, and therefore no photography from Tony Pierce Roberts. The music was recorded at Windmill Lane Studios in Dublin. Let's credit composer the music by Richard Robbins just for a moment. Why not? A number of English country estates were used as locations for the film, partly owing to the persuasive power of Ismail Merchant, who was able to cajole permission for the production to borrow houses not normally open to the public. Among them were Dereham Park for the exterior of the house and the driveway, Powderham Castle, staircase, hall, music room, bedroom, used for the aqua turquoise stairway scenes. Those are beautiful. Corsham Court, library and dining room, and Badminton House, servants' quarters, conservatory, entrance hall. Luciana Aragli, the production designer, scouted most of these locations. Scenes are also shot in Weston-super-Mare, which stood in for Clevedon. The pub where Mr. Stephen stays is the Hop Pole in Limpley Stoke. The shop featured is also in Limpley Stoke. The pub where Miss Kenton and Mr. Ben meet is the George Inn in Norton St. Philip. The character of Sir Geoffrey Wren is based loosely on that of Sir Oswald Mosley, a British fascist active in the 1930s. Wren is depicted as a strict vegetarian, like Hitler. The 3rd Viscount Halifax, later created the 1st Earl of Halifax, also appears in the film. Lord Darlington tells Stevens that Halifax approved of the polish on the silver, and Lord Halifax himself later appears when Darlington meets secretly with the German ambassador and his aides at night. Halifax was the chief architect of the British policy of appeasement from 1937 to 1939. The character of Congressman Jack Lewis in the film is a composite of two separate American characters in Kazuo Ishiguro's novel, Senator Lewis, who attends the pre-World War II conference in Darlington Hall, and Mr. Faraday, who succeeds Lord Darlington as Master of Darlington Hall. And now I'd like to read out about the Merchant Ivory Productions, a film company founded in 1961 by producer Ismail Merchant, who lived from 1936 to 2005, and director James Ivory, who was born in 1928 and lives to this day. Merchant and Ivory were life and business partners from 1961 until Merchant's death in 2005. During their time together, they made 44 films. The films are often based upon novels or short stories, particularly the work of Henry James, E.M. Forster, and Jabvala herself. The initial goal of the company was to make English-language films in India aimed at the international market. The style of Merchant Ivory films set and photographed in India became iconic. The company also went on to make films in the United Kingdom and America. Some actors and producers associated with Merchant Ivory include Maggie Smith, Leela Naidu, Madhur Jaffrey, Aparna Sen, Shashi Kapoor, Jennifer Kendall, Hugh Grant, James Wilby, Rupert Graves, Simon Callow, Anthony Hopkins, Glenn Close, Uma Thurman, Emma Thompson, Vanessa Redgrave, Natasha Richardson, Ray Fiennes, Colin Firth, Richard Hawley, and Helena Bonham Carter. Of this collaboration, Merchant once commented, "It is a strange marriage we have at Merchant Ivory. I am an Indian Muslim. Ruth is a German Jew, and Jim is a Protestant American. Someone once described us as a free-headed god. Maybe they should have called us a free-headed monster." The expression Merchant Ivory film has made its way into common parlance to denote a particular genre of film rather than the actual production company. While 1965's Shakespeare Walla put this genre on the international map, its heyday was in the 1980s and 1990s with such films as A Room with a View 1985 and Howard's End 1992. A typical Merchant Ivory film would be a period piece set in the early 20th century, usually in Edwardian England, featuring lavish sets and top British actors portraying genteel characters who suffer from disillusionment and tragic entanglements. The main theme often surrounded a house, which took on a particular importance in many Merchant Ivory films. Merchant Ivory Productions was founded in 1961 by Ismail Merchant and James Ivory in India to produce English-language films. After early modest successes of films such as The Householder, Shakespeare Walla, and Bombay Talkie, Merchant and Ivory suffered a lean period during the 1970s. Films such as Jane Austen in Manhattan and The Wild Party failed to find an audience. Their fortunes arrived dramatically in 1979 when they made an adaptation of Henry James' novel The Europeans. Their film Heat and Dust, 1983, was an art house hit in Europe, particularly in England. However, it was not until they worked together on A Room with a View, 1985, that they broke out from the art house into broader success. In 1985, Merchant Ivory Productions was signed by film distributor Cinecom International Films in order to give Cinecom access to the 11 Merchant Ivory productions at that time, as Cinecom had to increase its distribution schedule. In 1986, Merchant Ivory and Cinecom began their co-production lineup with the film The Deceivers. In 1987, after 25 years, as an independent producer, Merchant Ivory Productions would be courted by Hollywood power brokers and deep-pocket investors mesmerized by the success of the triple Oscar-winning feature film A Room with a View, and decided that they would decline 4 offers in order that they wanted to make the company go public. Around 1990, they moved their productions to England and the United States. Ruth Prawa Jabvala became their frequent collaborating writer. Major film studios sought them out. Disney signed Merchant Ivory Productions to a 3-year distribution deal in 1991. In October 2015, Cohen Media Group acquired the Merchant Ivory brand and library, 21 films and 9 documentaries, including worldwide distribution for restoration and re-release as part of the Cohen Film Collection. Ivory would be creative director on the film's restoration, re-release, and promotion. And yes, I said I'd read about Ismail Merchant. Let's do so. As I said, he was born 25th of December 1936 and he passed on the 25th of May 2005. Was an Indian film producer, director, and screenwriter. He worked for many years in collaboration with Merchant Ivory Productions, which included director and Merchant's longtime professional and domestic partner, James Ivory, as well as screenwriter Ruth Prawa Jabvala. Born in Bombay, now Mumbai, Merchant was the son of Hazra Ni Memon and Noor Mohammad Rahman, a Bombay textile dealer. He grew up bilingual in Gujarati and Urdu and learned Arabic and English at school. When he was 11, he and his family were caught up in the 1947 partition of India. His father was the president of the Muslim League and refused to move to Pakistan. Merchant later said that he carried memories of butchery and riots into adulthood. As a child at the age of 9, Merchant delivered a speech about partition at a political rally in front of a crowd of 10,000. At age 13, he developed a close friendship with actress Nimi, who introduced him to studios in Bombay, the centre of Hindi film industry. It was she who inspired his ambitious rise to stardom. Merchant studied at St. Xavier's College, Mumbai, and received BA degree of University of Bombay. It was here he developed a love for movies. When he was 22, he moved to USA to study at New York University, where he received an MBA degree. While in New York, he gave up his family name of Abdul Rahman for Merchant. He supported himself by working as a messenger for the UN in New York and used this opportunity to persuade Indian delegates to fund his film projects. Of this experience, he said, "I was not intimidated by anyone or anything. Immersed in a new world of art and culture, it was here that Merchant discovered the films of Bengali director Satyajit Ray, as well as those of European artists such as Ingmar Bergman, Vittorio De Sica, and Federico Fellini. In 1961, Merchant made a short film, The Creation of Woman. It was shown at the Cannes Film Festival and received an Academy Award nomination. Merchant met American movie director James Ivory at a screening in New York of Ivory's documentary The Sword and the Flute in 1959. In May 1961, Merchant and Ivory formed the film production company Merchant Ivory Productions. Merchant and Ivory were long-term life partners. Their professional and romantic partnership lasted 44 years, from 1961 until Merchant's death in 2005. The Guinness Book of World Records says theirs was the longest partnership in independent cinema history. Until Merchant's death in 2005, they produced nearly 40 films, including a number of award winners. Novelist Ruth Prower Jabvala was the screenwriter for most of their productions. In 1963, MIP premiered its first production, The Householder, based upon a novel by Jabvala, who also wrote the screenplay. This feature became the first Indian-made film to be distributed internationally by a major American studio, Columbia Pictures. However, it wasn't until the 1970s that partnership hit on a successful formula for studied, slow-moving pieces. Merchant Ivory became known for their attention to tiny period detail and opulence of their sets. Their first success in this style was Jabvala's adaptation of Henry James' The Europeans. In addition to producing, Merchant directed a number of films and 2 TV features. For TV, he directed a short feature entitled Mahatma and the Mad Boy, and a full-length feature, The Courtesans of Bombay, made for Britain's Channel 4. Merchant made his film directorial debut of 1993's In Custody, based on a novel by Anita Desai and starring Bollywood actor Shashi Kapoor. Filmed in Bhopal, India, it won national awards from the Government of India for Best Production Design and Special Jury Award for lead actor Shashi Kapoor. His second directing feature, The Proprietor, starred Janine Moreau, Sean Young, Jean-Pierre Ormont, and Christopher Cazenove, and was filmed on location in Paris, France. Of his partnership with Ivory and Jabvala, Merchant once commented, we know the three-headed monster quote. Lovely, of course. Remains of the Day. Spectacular film, in my view. Thanks again, my friends.